My wife, Alina, had just been promoted to creative director at her firm, and we decided to host a dinner with close friends and family to mark the occasion. Our home was packed. My parents, her sister, a couple of her co-workers, and my best friend of 20 years, Jake, who was practically a brother to me. Jake had flown in from Denver just for this. I hadn't seen him in months, and I was thrilled. He greeted me with his usual bear hug and a sly, almost hesitant grin. I chalked it up to him being tired from the flight. Dinner went well. Lots of laughter, Alina glowing in the center of attention. I stood by her side, proud of the woman I'd married, proud that even after 6 years, she still looked at me with that soft smile. Or so I thought. It wasn't until we raised our glasses for a toast that things turned. Jake cleared his throat, glass in hand. He gave the expected compliments. How hard-working and talented Alina was. How lucky I was to have her. But then he hesitated. He looked at me, eyes narrowing slightly. His voice changed. It was still calm but laced with a tension that made the room still. You know, when I flew in this morning, I wasn't sure if I should say anything, he began. But then I thought, what kind of best friend would I be if I stayed silent? The room fell silent. Alina's smile faltered. Jake continued. I saw something 2 months ago, in a restaurant in Denver. Alina was there, with a man who wasn't you. And they weren't just having dinner. My heart dropped. What the hell are you talking about? Alina barked. Try to laugh it off. That's ridiculous. Jake didn't back down. You were with a guy, mid-30s, beard, navy suit. You kissed him. Twice. And I followed you. You went into the same hotel. Gasps rippled around the table. Alina's face turned white. She opened her mouth, closed it, then glared at Jake like he had destroyed her world. You're making this up, she whispered, barely audible. Jake pulled out his phone. I wasn't going to say anything until I was sure, so I took pictures. He set the phone on the table and turned it to me. There she was, my wife, in a red dress I'd bought her for her birthday, locked in a kiss with a man I'd never seen before, her arms around his neck. The timestamp, 7:48 p.m., exactly when she had told me she was at a networking event. My mother gasped. Her sister cried out. And me? I just stared. I'm sorry, man, Jake said quietly. You needed to know. I got up slowly, hands trembling, heart hollow. Alina stood too. You followed me? You spied on me, she screamed, now more furious at being exposed and remorseful. I was trying to protect my best friend, Jake replied, his voice breaking. The night ended in chaos. People left quickly. Alina and I had our first real argument in years. Raw, vicious, honest. She admitted it, said it had just happened, that she was confused, that it meant nothing. But betrayal never means nothing. Jake stayed with me that night. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. He'd broken my heart to save me. And that's what a real best friend does. The morning after felt like waking up after a car crash. The house was too quiet. Alina was gone. She'd packed a bag and left sometime before sunrise. I didn't stop her. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't need to. Jake was sitting in the kitchen, sipping coffee he probably made out of habit more than anything else. His eyes were red-rimmed, not from lack of sleep, but from the weight of what he'd done. You didn't deserve that, he said finally, breaking the silence. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at the wall for a moment, trying to gather what little strength I had. You knew for 2 months? I asked. He nodded slowly. Yeah, I almost told you right away, but you were talking about renewing your vows. You remember that night on the phone? I did, vividly. I'd called him, excited, telling him how Alina and I had made it through a rough patch, how things were better than ever. He hadn't said much then, just that he was happy for me. I couldn't bring myself to ruin that for you, unless I was sure, Jay continued. So I hired someone, private investigator, confirmed everything a week later. I planned to fly in and talk to you face to face. But then this party came up. It felt like the right moment. I exhaled long and slow. Right moment. I repeated, then laughed bitterly. You nuked my life over dessert. Jake looked down. I know. but you would have kept loving someone who was lying to your face. I couldn't let that happen. I walked over, sat across from him. We stared at each other in the stillness that only comes after trust is shattered and then rebuilt in another form. I'm glad you did it, I said finally, even if it broke me. That evening, Alina texted, just one line. I never meant to hurt you. I didn't reply. Over the next few weeks, word spread through the family. My parents were heartbroken, not just for me, but because they'd grown to love Alina like a daughter. Her sister tried to reach out on her behalf. Said Alina wanted to explain that she was in therapy, that she was working on herself. But the thing about betrayal is, it doesn't get fixed with apologies, especially not when the other person had to be caught to come clean. Jake stayed with me for 3 more days. We drank a little too much, laughed a little too loud, and talked about everything but Alina. It was like being kids again. Only now the stakes were real. When he finally left for the airport, he pulled me into a hug and said, "You're going to get through this. And when you do, you'll look back and realize this was the moment you started living again." He was right. 6 months later, the divorce went through without much drama. Alina didn't contest anything. Maybe she felt guilty. Maybe she wanted to disappear. I sold the house and moved into a loft downtown. Smaller, quieter. Just mine. I started running again. I joined a community hiking group. I stopped pretending to be happy and started chasing things that actually made me feel alive. One afternoon, Jake texted me a photo. Him and a woman named Chloe, smiling on a trail in Colorado. "Not sure what this is yet," he wrote, "but I think I like it." I smiled. Then I replied, "Good. You deserve someone who knows what they have before they lose it." Final thought. Betrayal may end a chapter, but it's loyalty, the hard kind, the uncomfortable kind, that writes the next one. I hadn't thought much about Alina lately, at least not with the ache I used to feel. Occasionally, her name would pop up in conversation or on old mail, and I'd pause, but the sting had dulled. Then, out of nowhere, she reached out again. "Alina," text, "can we meet?" One conversation. That's all I'm asking. I stared at the message for a full 5 minutes. Then I forwarded it to Jake. "Me, she wants to meet." Jake, "Your call, man. But just remember, closure's something you give yourself." Still, curiosity got the better of me. So I agreed. We met at a quiet cafe, neutral territory. She walked in looking thinner, paler, and for the first time since I'd known her, unsure of herself. "Thanks for coming," she said softly, sitting down across from me. I nodded. "Let's keep this simple." She looked up at me with teary eyes, but I didn't flinch. "I just needed you to know," she began. "I didn't fall out of love with you. I fell out of love with who I was being with you. That confused me." I raised an eyebrow. "You were good to me. Too good," she said. I didn't know how to carry that. I felt invisible, like I was your plus one in life, not a partner. And then I met someone who made me feel seen in a different way. I shook my head slowly. "So instead of talking to me, you cheated?" She didn't answer. "I would have understood if you'd left," I said, my voice calm but resolute. "But you didn't. You stayed. You lied. You let me believe we had something sacred." Tears welled in her eyes again, but I didn't offer a tissue. I wasn't here to comfort her. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know I don't deserve anything from you, but I had to say it." I stood up. "You had your say. Now I'll say this. I loved you more than anyone else ever will. And I let that love blind me. But Jake?" He opened my eyes. I dropped a few bills on the table and turned to leave. As I reached the door, she called after me. "Did you ever think about forgiving me?" I looked over my shoulder. "I did," I said. Then I remembered I deserved better. A year later, life had a rhythm now. I co-founded a small media startup with Jake. Nothing flashy, but ours. I started dating again too, slowly, cautiously. One woman in particular, Tessa, had a wit that disarmed me and a calm I didn't realize I needed. We'd met at a charity fundraiser and bonded over a shared distaste of pretentious wine being served. She knew about my past, knew about Alina, and never asked for details. She just listened when I needed to speak. One night, while we were walking home, hand in hand, she stopped suddenly. "You know," she said, "whoever she was, I hope she knows what she lost." I smiled. "She does." Epilogue. Jake gave another toast a few months later, this time at my engagement party. He raised his glass, looked at me, and said, "To the people who break us, and to the ones who stay to pick up the pieces, and to my brother, who didn't just survive betrayal. He built a better life after it." And for once, I felt something I hadn't in a long, long time. 1 year later, the air was crisp the evening of my engagement party. Tessa stood beside me, radiant in a forest green dress, her hand resting lightly on my chest as she laughed with my mother. She brought color back into my life, not just love, but peace, balance, and a sense that I could finally stop looking over my shoulder. The backyard was strung with lights. Music drifted in the background. People danced, drank, and toasted to fresh starts. Jake clinked his glass to get everyone's attention. He was about to speak. But then I saw her, Alina, standing just beyond the crowd, near the tree line, dressed in black. No invitation, no message, just there, like a ghost from another life. Watching. Jake saw her too. His eyes went hard. "Do you want me to?" I shook my head. Instead, I walked over slowly. The noise faded behind me. She didn't speak at first. Her eyes flicked to the ring on my hand, then to Tessa laughing behind me. "I thought maybe if I saw it for myself," she said quietly, "I'd stop wondering." "Wondering what?" "If you'd ever really move on." I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I didn't just move on," I said. "I leveled up." She looked away, blinking fast. "I was stupid. I know that now. And seeing you this happy, it hurts more than I thought it would." "Good," I said simply. She looked stunned. "Because pain is the only language you seem to understand when you were with me. Maybe now you'll finally get it." I turned to walk away, but paused and looked back one last time. "You wanted center stage, Alina, but you never realized the audience was watching you fall." I left her standing there, in the shadows, while I stepped back into the light, back to Tessa, back to my best friend, back to the life I built not in spite of betrayal, but because of it. And as Jake raised his glass of final toast, his voice rang out over the crowd. "To the ones who lost us, may they spend the rest of their lives realizing it." The crowd erupted in applause. And somewhere, deep inside, I finally felt it. Not the kind you beg for in unanswered texts. Not the kind you hope to find in someone else's apology. No, this was earned. Closure came the night I stood with the woman who chose me. Not for my success, not for spotlight, but for who I was when the lights were off. It came in Jake's loyalty, in the unshakable bond of someone who told the truth, even when it shattered everything. It came when I looked into the eyes of the woman who betrayed me and felt nothing. Not rage, not longing, just stillness. Closure wasn't a door she closed. It was a door I walked through on my own. And as I stood among people who mattered, with a future that felt earned, not fabricated, I realized something. The worst day of my life didn't break me. It introduced me to the version of myself I was always meant to be.